What's up, football heads? Welcome back to that show. As always, I'm your host, Kyle McQueen. We're back with part two of yesterday's episode, Let Me Talk to You Tuesday, that came out on Monday. This is Let Me Talk to You Tuesday, going to come out on a Tuesday. Got a couple bonus episodes coming up, the pick show, stacked week. But let's get right into it.
Let me talk to you.
Pick up where we left off. The afternoon games, the 4 p.m. games, the 1 p.m. games, if you're out here on the West Coast like your boy. And first game I want to touch on, Arizona Cardinals hosting the Chicago Bears. I think a lot of us expected this to be a much more competitive game than it ended up being. Both of these teams somewhere in the middle, but looking like this is a season where they're kind of going to make a move, make a jump up a little bit, set themselves up maybe for future years. But the Cardinals try and get back to their winning ways from a few years ago. Now that Kyler Murray's back healthy for the full year, you add Marvin Harrison Jr. Their defense has been playing pretty solid. I think numbers-wise, not great, but when you watch them, you feel like in the games that they're winning, their defense is playing well, and it's just kind of like Buda Baker and a bunch of guys that nobody really knows. But the Cardinals are second in the NFC in both strength of schedule and strength of victory, which is interesting. You take a look at their schedule thus far. They played that tight game against the Bills in week 1, throttled the Rams in week 2, tight game week 3 against the Lions, got throttled by the Commanders, so there's a little bit of a trend here. Beat the 49ers again. The 49ers not at full strength, not playing their best ball. Then they got throttled by the Packers. Then they edged out the Chargers, edged out the Dolphins, throttled the Bears. So you look at that last group of games. Now, I guess when you look at who have they really beaten despite having the second best strength of victory, you got the Bears, a 500 team, Niners, a 500 team. The Chargers are your one, like, not truly mid. They're kind of mid, but they're not mid. They're getting better. So I don't think we can put too much stock into the Cardinals' strength of schedule and strength of victory. At the very least, if they make the playoffs, which they're currently leading the NFC West, to some degree, you got to say they're battle tested, even if they're losing those games. They lost to the Bills, lost to the Lions, lost to the Packers, but at least most of them lost to the Commanders. They got the shit kicked out of them by the Commanders, got the shit kicked out of them by the Packers, but the Lions game and the Bills game kept it close. So there's room there to feel like, all right, if they make the playoffs, depending on the matchup, if they win the division, if they can hold on, and there's a lot of ball left to be played, that depending on the matchup, maybe they could steal a playoff game. Probably not. I'd probably look at it because, again, you're looking at they're probably, if they win the West, probably going to be the 4 seed. You imagine whoever wins the North, Detroit, probably going to be the 1 seed. Whoever wins the East, both the Eagles and the Commanders have got themselves out to a really nice start. What are they, like a game and a half or 2 games up on the Cardinals in terms of seeding rankings? And then the same thing with the Falcons in the South. We went through their schedule in part 1, and they should be poised to win like 11 games. So the Cardinals, if they can hold on, probably going to be the 4 seed, which means you're going to be playing the top NFC wildcard teams. And there's some good options out there, the Vikings, the Packers. See what happens with some of their divisional opponents, with the Rams and the 49ers. And if the Cardinals end up as a wildcard team, then you're going to be playing, again, Detroit, probably, the Commanders of the Eagles, the Falcons, or one of your divisional opponents on the road. So I'm not bullish on the Cardinals winning any playoff games, but certainly they can make the playoffs. They got a tough road. Let's look at the remaining schedule. They got the Jets next week in Arizona. So again, the Jets, nice win on Thursday night over a beat up Texans team. We'll see how again, I'm never going to write off Aaron Rodgers. I have been Stockholm syndromed by the man. I am an apologist. I am an Aaron Rodgers truther. But again, the Jets got a ton of talent. So I'm not going to sit here and say it's an easy game despite the record. Then they travel to Seattle, who's absolutely falling apart. They travel to Minnesota, which is going to be another test. Then they got Seattle at home. Patriots at home should be a win. Panthers at home should be a win. At the Rams, and then host the 49ers. So you like that Patriots game, you like that Panthers game. That's 2 wins. That puts them at 7. Get one of those Seahawks games. That's going to put you at 8. Then it's like, I feel like you got to get that Jets game at home. On the road against the Vikings is going to be tough. On the road against the Rams is going to be tough. The Rams can stay healthy and keep kind of surging through the end of the season. And the same thing for the 49ers. Even if it's in Arizona, it's going to be a tough game. So I don't know if you're the Cardinals. Can you squeak out 10 wins? Can you get 2 Seattle games? Can you get 1 Seattle game and one of these other divisional games? Can you get the Jets game? Can you pull off an upset in Minnesota? We'll see. I hope not. But at the very least, they're going to be battle tested. You look at that schedule, just right here, you got a very tough, tightly packed division. The Vikings, we'll see how the Jets pan out the rest of the year. Have they figured things out, or are they going to just waffle back and forth? It remains to be seen. But then again, Chargers, Packers, Commanders, Lions, Bills, like they've been tested. If they can get to 10 wins and get to the playoffs, then at the very least you feel good about them next year, potentially. So I don't know. You gotta like what the Cardinals are doing. They beat the dog shit out of the Bears. It was a game first half, and then the second half they just took over and did what they did. As far as the Bears are concerned, it's a tough loss. You're trying to keep pace in the best division in football. They've been stuck at the bottom this whole time, despite being 4-3 coming into the game. Now 4-4. Like, you're still at 500, but it's tough to go down like that. You lose a close game on the road to Arizona. That's one thing, but I mean, Caleb Williams takes 9 sacks. You got the one play everyone's talking about. DJ Moore just walks off the field in the middle of the play. The thought being that he thought Caleb was down or done, and then Caleb circles all the way back around the field looking for a play, and then DJ Moore's just off sitting on the bench while all this is happening. But the word on the street is that he stepped out of bounds, and so he was taking himself off the field to not be a distraction so Caleb doesn't think, oh, there's DJ Moore, let me throw him the ball, even though he's not an eligible receiver. But if you want to unpack it even further, like, there was no, like, let me get off the field, turn around, and watch the rest of the play. He just walked straight through his teammates, straight to the bench, sat down. Again, Caleb Williams taking 9 sacks. Can't happen. Talked about this earlier in the year when the Bears were struggling out of the gate a little bit, especially on offense. Set him up to learn to be a game manager and then start mixing in that dynamic playmaking ability that he showed in his Heisman campaign at USC. But then they kind of started doing that. They stopped throwing the ball 50 times a game. They leaned on the run game more. They leaned on the defense. They didn't ask Caleb to play hero ball. And then now here we are. He's throwing a bunch of passes and scrambling for his life. And thus far, I have yet to see that dynamism from that Heisman campaign that I just talked about. Like, I have not seen that translate at all. And I'm not saying it's not going to. It's just thus far, halfway through his rookie season, I haven't seen it. You see the attempts at it, but again, it's the man's game. Bigger, stronger, faster, more experienced. You're not going to be able to toy with these people like you toyed with the kids in college. Like, these are grown-ass men. You ain't going to be able to just run around and do whatever you want to do. So I just I understand that's why you drafted him first overall. I understand that's why he went first overall. I understand that's why everyone called him a generational talent. It's why he won a Heisman. It's why he was this ballyhooed prospect. But if you just let him go out there and try and play hero ball all the time, this is what's going to happen. You're going to get 9 sacks. You're going to score 9 points and get the dog shit kicked out of you by the Arizona Cardinals, who are a solid team. They look like a pretty decent team, a pretty good team. They're above 500. They're at home. But this is not the recipe for success for the Bears, especially like you want to control the ball, control the clock. You got your defense is much more locked in than your offense is right now, just from playing with each other, having the same defensive play caller. And the offense, like they got the pieces, obviously they got the receivers, but the offensive line is a problem, and you're dealing with a rookie quarterback. I don't care how good he is. I don't care what his ceiling is. He's still a rookie quarterback. Your defense is the strength of the team. Play ball control. Just try and control the clock, control the pace, control the game flow. Let your defense rest so they're not on the field all the time, because that's the one thing that can kill any great defense is if they're on the field too much and they're going to get worn out. So just don't let that happen, and good things can happen. But I find them slipping back into their old ways from earlier in the season before they kind of got on a little bit of a run. So, I mean, if you're a Bears fan, I think you want to see them get back to that, run the ball more, don't throw the ball 40, 50 times a game, put Caleb in comfortable spots, easy throws, let him build up a rhythm, get a quick game going, get the screen game going so you're not worried about the offensive line. Control the clock, control the pace so your defense is rested so when they get out there, they can do their thing. They're at full strength. And if you can get a lead, if you can grind it out early and get a lead, then it'll let them, pin their ears back and rush the passer. But I don't know. I don't have a ton of faith in Eberflus as a head coach at this point. I thought they should have fired him before the year. Not because he's necessarily bad. Like, obviously, he built up a pretty damn good defense here and is coaching them extremely well. But you're bringing in a number 1 overall quarterback, a generational talent. You might as well just clean the slate, bring in an offensive guy, an offensive play call. Because now if you fire Eberflus after the year and you replace him with a young offensive guy, I've been on the record saying I think Cliff Kingsbury is probably the fit. Obviously him and Caleb have history from USC. Cliff, not the greatest run when he was the coach of Arizona. There were some issues there, but he's having a great run right now, coaching up Jaden Daniels, also a rookie who is outplaying Caleb Williams. And I think if you bring him over, we'll see. Maybe him and Caleb fit better than him and Kyler did. Maybe he can have a little bit more of a handle in his second go around over the overall operations of the football team than he did when he was in Arizona, where it kind of just felt like, the inmates were running the asylum, so to speak. But either way, Caleb, now he's got to learn a new offense in year 2, and that sets you back a year. And it's just like you see this over and over again in this league, and it's like how do these people how have they not figured this out yet? Like if you got a top pick and you're taking a young quarterback and you are even lukewarm on your defensive head coach, just fire him. I hate calling for people's jobs, especially in this economy. Whatever happens with this election today, I'm anticipating the economy will continue to suck because they don't care about us, the people, but this is not a political show. I won't get into that. But just rip the Band-Aid off and set yourself up. You're resetting by drafting a young quarterback with your top pick. No matter how you slice it, you're resetting to some degree. So just reset. Unless you're in love with the guy that you got, just reset. That's the move. That's the way to do it. But I don't know. We'll see how the Bears shake out. Again, the uphill battle in a division with Detroit, Minnesota, Green Bay. Not super optimistic on them making a playoff run, but you're still in a position to build yourself up, to establish some connection there on the offensive side, keep the defense working toward its overall potential to be a championship caliber defense, and then maybe you get the right guy in next year and you take off a little bit next year. So I don't know, but just put Caleb in better positions to be successful. If you throw him out there expecting him to win a Heisman Trophy, and I got news for you, this ain't college. You can't win a Heisman Trophy. It's a different game. It's a man's game. Just don't put him in bad positions. So many teams, they don't know. And it doesn't make sense because I'm a stupid fan. I'm sitting here watching, and I can see it. We can all see it. You watching, listening at home, you can see it. How badly these teams fuck up young quarterbacks repeatedly. And I'm not saying it's easy to have success with them, but it's pretty easy to identify some of the dumb bozo shit that these teams continue to do year after year, franchise after franchise, young quarterback after young quarterback to fuck them up. Just don't do the dumb shit. If you don't do the dumb shit, you're already halfway there. At the very least, you're not ruining the prospect. Then you got to figure out how to develop the prospect, but at least you're not ruining the kid. You're not setting him up to fail. They're setting him up to fail. I'm not saying Caleb's going to fail, but he is being set up right now not to succeed. There's worse out there. I don't want to make the Bears seem like they're the absolute worst when it comes to this, but you're not setting him up to have success. Next, let's get into Philly and the Jags. Eagles starting to put it together. 5-2 coming into the game. Eagles fans weeks ago, Caesar told me, not on the show, but told me, he's like, I think about it. I'm like, I think we're good. And then they win a couple games, and it's like, all right, maybe they are good. I don't know. I will say Philly likes to flirt with it, though. They love to flirt with disaster. It has not bit them in the ass as much as it could have thus far this season, but they like to flirt with it. They were up, 22-0. Jags come back. Trevor Lawrence has the ball in the red zone with a chance to win the game. Throws a bad pass to, you're throwing a fade route to a running back. Like maybe Aaron Jones. And that's a little bit biased, but I don't know. I'm not a big fade guy anyway, unless you got Randy Moss, Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins. You got one of those Calvin Johnson, one of those all-time just giant, big body, Hall of Fame, perennial, all-pro guys. But to do it to a running back, just no. So the Jags, like I said last week, they're settling in as a real football team. They're not just a joke like they looked for the first month and a half of the season. And they're going to be somewhere low middle. That right now they're in the mix. There's a massive logjam tie for worst record in the league right now, which we got a bonus episode coming out later this week where I want to break down the powerless rankings, because it is this historical amount of teams vying for the number one overall pick. There's a lot of options out there, and the Jags are in that mix, but I just feel like they've been playing good enough ball that by the end of the year they're going to pick up some wins. They couple tough lot. You lose to Green Bay in Green Bay, you lose to Philly. These are good football teams at the very least, so it's not you're losing tough games to bad teams. I'm sure they got some bad teams on the schedule. They play in the AFC South, so they're going to have some winnable games here coming up, and they're going to pick up some wins. But Philly, a lot of chatter. Nick Sirianni, the 2-point conversion, specifically the late 2-point conversion, which I don't think you can blame Sirianni. If you got a chance to go up 14, go up 14. There's a better chance that you're going to get the 2-point conversion than they're going to miss an extra point, in my opinion. And I'm not an analytics guy by any stretch. Very few people talking more shit about analytics than I am, because I think most of these people are clowns and bozos that there's no context to the numbers, which is why I'm a big fan of Adam Dobrovolsky and his work, because it's all about what is the context to the analysis. But this is one of those times where it's like, yeah, go for two. Get the 14-point lead. If it's a 12-point game, either way, 2 touchdowns and extra points, they're going to win the game, and it's still 2 touchdowns. You might as well go for the 2. You're the Eagles. You got the tush push, which was not working. They looked a little confused on both of those 2-point attempts, which I think is the bigger issue here, is why was there this degree of confusion more so than the actual call to go for the 2. But I don't know. The weapons are there. A.J. Brown, I guess he's nursing a knee injury, but it's not expected to be serious. Smitty, one of the most spectacular catches you'll see with the deep ball one-handed catch. I think I spoke about this in part 1. Just a ton of great one-handed catches this weekend for whatever reason. And Smitty, one of the best. So they got their pieces. Saquon Barkley, the reverse hurdle play. I mean, what can you even say? If you haven't seen it, I don't know who's listening to this that has not seen the Saquon Barkley reverse hurdle, but go watch it. And even if you have seen, even if you've seen it a million times, go watch it again, because it's a fantastic play. I know Giants fans out there are suffering watching that unfold, but he's a great football player. I don't know why there weren't more teams knocking his door down trying to pay him money, because the Eagles got him for him, in my opinion, a pretty good deal. Was he getting paid $13 million? Something like that? Let me pull up Spotrac and see what the fine people over at Spotrac have to say about Saquon Barkley's contract. Whatever. Well, I just remember seeing the deal and be like, that's it? I was mad at the Vikings. $13.5 million this year in cash, a $3.8 million cap hit. Come on, man. They can get out of it after next year. Next year, his cap hit is only $5.5 million. How much cash? I can't do the math, and it's not important. But I mean, a lot of void years on here, so that's gonna be something to deal with. But it's a 3-year, $37.75 million contract. For Saquon Barkley, you watch what he's doing. He's dominating everybody. He had the one drop early in the year that, it cost him the game or whatever. But beyond that, he has won them more football games. If you replace him with a replacement level running back, they probably lose one of those games at the very least. He's out here dominating, underpaid. They're all underpaid. I was mad. I wanted the Vikings to go after him, because why the fuck not? You're getting out from the Kirk Cousins deal. Like, go pay Saquon. Now they go get Aaron Jones, who's been playing great ball for us, so I'm not going to sit here and hate. But all these teams that could use running backs, all these teams that were like, yeah, you know what? We're good. We'll draft a guy in the 5th round. We'll get one of these cheap guys. We'll get a couple cheap guys. Running back by committee. The New York Giants, the New York Football Giants of New Jersey had him. He wanted to come back. They could have just paid him. They didn't. Now look at him. They suck. And Saquon is good, and the Eagles are good. So, I don't know. We need to get past this bullshit where we're not paying running backs. Like, it is an important position. The dynamic star running backs are important players. They are star players. They can change the calculus. Just pay them. Because even if you're paying Saquon top of the market money for a running back, it's 3 years, we'll call it 3 years, $38 million. It's not even $13 million a year. Look at Justin Jefferson, best receiver in football. He's getting paid $35 million a year. The receivers are getting paid $30 to $35 million now. Quarterbacks are getting paid $50 to $60 million. You got to sit here and tell me you got a chance to add a top 2, top 3 running back for $13 million a year, and that's a bad investment? Get out of here. 3 years. He's been well worth his money this year. You get one more good year out of it. According to Spotrac, you can get out of this deal after next year with how much dead cap? Let's see. 8.7 dead cap. which ain't that bad. There's much worse. Ask the Denver Broncos about dead cap. Ask the Browns with that Deshaun Watson contract about dead cap. 8.7 ain't bad if they want to get out of it after next year. But right now, with Saquon, if they don't have Saquon, if they just have a league average running back, I firmly believe this team is not 6-2 right now. Firmly believe it. Let's stop pretending that running backs don't matter. They matter. They've always mattered. They will always matter. When it comes to December, January, February, what do you got to do? You got to run the ball. You got to stop the run. Why is that? Because running backs matter. And Saquon proves that on a week-to-week basis, even beyond the crazy highlight, reverse hurdle, and all that shit. Like, you can lean on him. Kellen Moore is leaning on him. If Jalen Hurts isn't in a rhythm, if he's not having his best game, he's not having his best season, if the receivers are out injured like they were earlier in the year, no problem. We'll just turn around and hand it off to 2-6 and let Saquon do what he does. So, I don't know. That's a whole aside and another conversation that I'm sure I will have 15 times by the end of the year, because it's just one of those stupid things that the league has decided that they're doing that I don't understand. But as far as the Eagles go, 6-2, you got to like where they're at. Half game back in the division. They've been more tested, a little more battle tested. Let's look at their schedule. Who have they beaten? They beat the Packers, lost to the Falcons, lost to the Bucks, beat the dog shit out of the Bengals. So not a ton of quality wins. You got to win over the Jags, win over the Giants, win over the Browns, win over the Saints. The Packers win. It's week 1. Things are kind of weird. It was in Brazil with the weird grass and blah, blah, blah. So the Eagles, you don't love the wins. There's no like signature win. There's no like top tier, high quality win. But they still got both games against the Commanders, who we talked about in part 1. Same deal. They don't really have a signature win. But again, you can only play the games on your schedule. They're handling business. 7-2, 6-2 for the Eagles. So those 2 games loom very large. Eagles, they still got both Cowboys games. They got the Panthers on the schedule. They got another Giants game on the schedule. Then you got some tests. You got to go to LA November 24th, take on the Rams. Following week, you got to go to Baltimore, take on the Ravens in the first December game. Host the Steelers. We'll see where the Steelers are at by then. But that's another team that, again, 6-2, handling their business, winning the games on the schedule. So there's a few tests in there. But for the most part, you got a couple Cowboys games. They're going to win at least one of them. We'll see if they can win both of them. The Cowboys are just listless right now. Again, another Giants game, the Panthers. So, should win 3 of those, at least 3 of those 4. That puts you at 9 wins. And then you got 2 Commanders games, Rams, Steelers. So you get 1 of those 4, you're at 10 wins. You get 2 of them, including one against the Commanders, go 2-2 in those tough games. You're at 11 wins. Maybe you knock the Commanders down. Maybe you have a better divisional record than the Commanders end up having, and you tie at 11 wins and win the division. So Eagles still very much in play. Just want to see them grab a signature win in here. Like if they can go to Baltimore and upset the Ravens, I think that'll be big for them. If they can make a statement against the Commanders and beat them by, 10 points, 14 points, something like that. You want someone on the schedule you can hang your hat on and say, like, this is a signature win. This is a key win. This shows that we can go in and compete with top playoff teams. I'm circling, for as much as I'm looking forward to that first Commanders game on Thursday Night Football in a couple weeks. I'm circling that Ravens game if I'm an Eagles fan. Because, again, the Commanders haven't been tested as much as some of these other top teams. Steelers, I feel like everyone still has some weird doubts on. Like, I think we accept that the defense is good because it's the Steelers. But I think everyone kind of just has a little healthy doubt on the Steelers, which, again, if you're a Steelers fan, tell me why I'm wrong. So I'm open to it. But that Ravens game, that's the one where it's the one game on the schedule where you're playing a legitimate top contender. in otherwise I don't want to say a soft schedule, but again, it's just not. You're not dealing with a Detroit. You had the Green Bay game, but that was week 1. Things are kind of wonky. You're in Brazil, like just a lot of weird circumstances. I'm not taking the win away from the Eagles for sure, but I don't know. They got an opportunity to win a bunch of games here, and if they can win that Ravens game on the road, then I think that'll solidify in people's minds, like, okay, the Eagles can contend with people. They're not just beating up on these middling teams. They're not beating up on the dumpster fire teams in the league. Like, they're capable of going in and competing against a top tier team that you're gonna see in the playoffs if you get that far, which they should, because they're 6-2 and their schedule's easy. And if the Eagles don't make the playoffs, a lot of people getting fired is really what it's going to come down to. They just got to protect the ball, don't do dumb shit, and they got potential. We just got to see how it all shakes out. Now, the Detroit football Lions, once again, best team balling. I was looking forward to this game. I was hyping this game up. This is going to be a slobber knocker. This is going to be a hell of a game to watch. It's going to be entertaining. It's going to be tightly contested, divisional game, frozen tundra of Lambeau Field, Detroit and Green Bay, suddenly a fierce rivalry after decades of Detroit just getting their shit kicked in, especially in Lambeau by the Packers. And Detroit pretty much just came out and beat the dog shit out of them. There's really no way around it. They beat it. The final score says 24-14. It never felt anywhere near that close the entire game. Now, Jordan Love was injured, played injured. You could tell the way he was moving around with I believe his groin, not anywhere near 100%. So if he's at 100%, does this game go differently? Is it closer? It's probably closer for sure. But do they win? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see when they play each other later in the season. But at the end of the day, Detroit, it was their first game outside this year, which they made a big deal about. But it's like, have you seen how the team's built? Like, they're tough. They're gritty. They're going to smash you in the mouth. If they need to just pound the rock all day because it's raining real hard, then that's what they're going to do. And that's what they did. And Jared Goff still is just like allergic to throwing incompletions. I believe the stat is during this win streak, 28 touchdown passes, only 24 incompletions. So that the insane stat persists. At some point, those numbers got to flip. It just has to happen. But Jared Goff's on pace to set a record for completion percentage, set to become, I believe, the 9th, if he can keep this up, quarterback in NFL history, the 9th instance of a quarterback in NFL history to record a passer rating of 115 or higher throughout the course of a season. So Goff is balling. The whole thing with Goff is you got to get heat on him early to prevent him from getting into a rhythm. And the problem is this dude is in such a rhythm. This dude has been in a rhythm for a month and a half. So I don't think it's that easy anymore. Like, you're gonna need to get him on his ass multiple times in the first couple drives of a game to shake him loose, because he's so locked in right now. It is ridiculous. So you can't take it away from him. They went into Green Bay, went into Lambeau, went into their trap, took over their trap. That's just the way it is. Beat the shit out of the Packers. And my gut was telling me the Packers. I picked Detroit because of the Jordan Love injury, and you can't pick against Detroit right now. My gut was saying Green Bay, and Green Bay did not show up. Now, again, how much of this is the Jordan Love injury? How much of it is just Detroit being a better team? I don't know. But Green Bay did not look ready for this game. They did not look ready for the rain. They did not look ready for Detroit. Again, the Jordan Love injury obviously was a factor. And it was certainly a factor in this, but even when he's not injured, this is kind of always my takeaway from big Packers games is Jordan Love has a propensity to throw some bad balls. He can throw some great balls. He can go out there and do some Brett Favre shit, do some Aaron Rodgers shit for sure. I mean, ask the Dallas Cowboys fans about that playoff game last year. Ask me, a Vikings fan, what happened in the penultimate game of the year last year. Granted, we were starting Jaron Hall, but Jordan Love, when he's on, is a monster. But even when he's on and he's a monster, there's at least going to be one or two plays a game where he throws a ball and you're just like, what the hell was that? What was he looking at? Aaron Rodgers had it down to a science, how to have the unconventional mechanics be rolling out, back foot, sidearm, all at the same time, throwing across his body 50 yards downfield, and he could throw it on a dot every single time. Jordan Love can do that, but not 100% of the time. And whatever the split is, if it's 50-50, if it's 75-25, if it's 99-1, whatever that percentage of bad balls is, they are really bad balls. And you get a game like this where you're injured, you got the groin injury, which is going to hamper you moving around. It's going to probably hamper your mechanics and trying to throw. And you got the rain coming down, and you're playing against the top team in the league, in the Detroit Lions. It's a recipe for disaster, and it was a disaster. So I think we still don't know who Jordan Love's going to be. I feel like there's a lot of quarterbacks like that in the league right now. There's this section of quarterbacks where they're getting paid a lot of money, and we've seen them do something where you're like, okay, this is a potential serious quarterback. It's a potential guy. And so they pay him because it's only going to get more expensive if then they go and prove it again. But then they're kind of like, Jalen Hurts is in this. You know, there's guys across the league getting paid a lot of money where you're still like, nah, I'm not. It's not like you're paying Lamar, you're paying Josh Allen, you're paying Patrick Mahomes, where this guy is going to be a Pro Bowl, All-Pro, MVP candidate every single year, no matter what. Like, those guys are not on that list. So I don't know. Like, Jordan Love appears to have the talent to be a top 5 type of guy, but he ain't there yet. There's moments where he's like that. There's stretches where he's like that. But then there's these other moments, these other stretches where it's just like, this is just not – it's not good football. It's just not. But – I don't know. Their schedule coming up, they got the Bears in Chicago. Then they host the 49ers, host the Dolphins. Then Thursday Night Football, December 5th at the Detroit Football Lions, followed by a Sunday Night Football game at Seattle. Monday night, hosting the Saints. And then the penultimate game, feels like this is every year, at Minnesota. And then they finish up at home against Chicago. So – they're going to get one of those Chicago games for sure. Should beat the Saints pretty easily. They should beat the Dolphins. Seattle has not been the usual, Seattle in contention for top bandwagon fan base. No offense, Seattle fans. Not the diehards watching this show. You guys know you're diehard. You know where you stand. But I don't know. The 12s just don't seem like they're out this year. So I don't know. But like Bears, Seahawks, Saints, Dolphins, that's 4 right there. That gives you 10 wins. Now, can they do what they did last year, lose in Lambeau to Minnesota, go to Minnesota and beat the Vikings? That would give you another one. And then if they can get that get back against Detroit on Thursday night, December 5th, you get 12 wins there. If you get both Bears games, it's up in the air, but they're definitely going to be tested, having to play Detroit twice, having to play Minnesota twice. They had to play the Eagles, the 49ers in a couple weeks. Maybe McCaffrey's back. Maybe they're back up to speed. Maybe they're on a little bit of a win streak, so we'll see how that goes. But I think you still got to feel pretty confident that this is at least a 10-win team, that they're going to be in that wild card mix at the very least. And again, if you could rip off this Bears game, hosting the Niners, hosting the Dolphins, head into Thursday Night Football at 9-3 against Detroit and beat Detroit, the division might not be out of play. But as of right now, Detroit is the class of the NFC North, and I do feel like Green Bay has some things to figure out. And even if it's just, do we need to rest Love? Like they're undefeated in games that Malik Willis plays. Peak Malik Willis. We love peak Malik Willis on this show. So maybe you need to rest. Again, you got Chicago. Maybe you rest Jordan Love in Chicago. You let Malik Willis go out there and try and do his thing. I don't know, but I feel like going into that game, you were expecting, like, we're going to get answers here. We're going to understand the pecking order a little bit better. We're going to understand who Green Bay is, where they slot in. Are they that, like, number 2 team? Are they potentially the best team if they can pull off the upset against Detroit? And now I feel like you just got more questions. You got more questions about Jordan Love. You got the defense is playing well, but then they trade Preston Smith today. I'm not sure. In my mind, Preston Smith is a menace. I don't know. Maybe if he's just aging out a little bit and they only get a 7th-round pick for him, maybe he hasn't been playing as much because they just throw assets into that defense. They got a ton of 1st-round picks, 2nd-round picks on that defense. So they might just feel comfortable with the young guys. Preston Smith's been getting phased out a little bit. I'm not sure. So Packers fans, you could let me know. But I don't know. I just feel like coming out of that game, Green Bay's got more questions than maybe the answers we thought we were going to get. Seattle might be dead. I'm not going to say they're dead. They're definitely not dead, like Dallas is dead, or the Saints are dead, or the Raiders are dead, but they might be dead. Geno is absolutely cooked in the red zone. I mean, every time they get the ball in the red zone and Geno drops back, you're just waiting. You're waiting for a extinction level event to happen on the field wherever they're playing, because it's a disaster and it's inexcusable. There's really no way around it. To start 3-0 and be where they're at now, you got guys fighting on the field, you got guys fighting on the sideline. Geno just pissed every time he walks to the sideline. The dude cannot get into the red zone and get out of the red zone without turning the ball over. So Seattle, I talked about the lack of home field advantage this year. Seattle, they might be dead. But the Rams might be back. Again, I thought the Rams would handle business maybe a little bit easier than they did, but they win in overtime. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're a real contender by any stretch. I think there's holes on the roster. There's holes on the defense. But again, you got 2 really good to great wide receivers at any given time. You got a Super Bowl winning head coach. You got a Super Bowl winning quarterback who's playing some good ball right now. Kyron Williams still doing his thing. So they are absolutely in the mix in the West. They are absolutely in the mix to make the playoffs. And again, you got a Super Bowl winning coach, you got a Super Bowl winning quarterback. At the very least, that gives you a chance to steal a game in the playoffs. I don't think they're contenders. I don't think they're going to the Super Bowl. I don't think they're going to the championship game. But I would not be shocked if they made the playoffs, either at winning the division or as a wild card team and finding a way to win a playoff game. Would not shock me, depending on the matchup. And speaking of the Rams and segueing to Sunday Night Football, my Minnesota Vikings at home against the Indianapolis Colts. I would like to personally apologize publicly to every Vikings fan out there, to everybody in the Vikings organization, everyone who dons the purple in any capacity on a week-to-week basis. I would like to personally and publicly apologize for jinxing the Rams game in my appearance on Purple Daily on Write That Down, when I brought up the fact that I have never seen a Vikings loss in person and that I was going to the Rams game. And I said, as I was saying this, I feel like I'm jinxing this, and I should have stopped right there. So I take the L. It's on me. You got point thumbs, not fingers. Point your thumb, not your finger. It's my fault. It's on me. The Vikings, I'm not going to say they should be 7-1 right now, but they only have one legitimate loss by 2 points to the Detroit Lions. That loss to the Rams It's also a little bit on the refs for not calling that face mask, even though they were already down 8 points by that. But they had a chance. You get the 15 yards, get a little momentum going, get down the field, get the overtime, see what happens. But that loss is on me. Do not hold that against the Minnesota Vikings, whether you are a fan or not. That loss, it counts on the record, but it should not be held against the team, and their performance is on me. Sorry, it is what it is. And while we're on that and on the face mask that two referees are staring right at and somehow cannot figure out, cannot see, and throw the flag on, I'm worried because they go to Jacksonville next week, and Trevon Walker and Josh Allen Hines, they might legitimately be able to set up a guillotine in the Vikings backfield and chop off Sam Darnold's head for crimes against the people and still not get a flag thrown on it. The Colts, their only touchdown in the game, came on a fumble return touchdown. Sam Darnold was sacked, fumbled the ball. I believe Kenny Moore picked it up, ran it in for a touchdown. And blatant, clear as day, right there. The ref threw a flag because he said, I thought it might have been a face mask. And you watch the play, and the guy's arm just smashes Sam Darnold right in the face. Now, again, this is football. It's a grown man's game. I have for years complained about how soft they're making the game. You got to let the boys play. You got to let them get away with some stuff. I don't think it was an egregious play. Not like the face mask, which was incredibly egregious and needed to be called. This, in a perfect world, if the game was being officiated the way I would officiate it as a dumbass fan on my couch, I probably wouldn't have thrown the flag. By the letter of the law, by the way that they officiate the game week to week for years now, for a decade now, it's a 15-yard penalty. You wipe out the fumble, you wipe out the fumble return, you wipe out the touchdown, Vikings ball plus 15 yards, we're moving. So I don't know what's up with these refs. They gotta get it together. Just be consistent. If you're gonna let the boys play, let the boys play. If you're not gonna let the boys play, don't let them play. But don't not throw a flag on the Vikings every week and then throw flags for everybody else. It's ridiculous and it's bullshit. But anyway, the game, it was a weird game. It was a tight game. But despite that, I feel like the Vikings very sneakily showed how dominant they could be if they're consistent on both sides of the ball and they protect the ball. Sam Darnold had a rough game, but I would not say he had a bad game. Because you take away the fumble that got returned for a touchdown and the 2 interceptions and maybe one other sack, and he played excellent. They moved the ball with consistency. No 3 and outs in the entire game. I'm not even convinced. I did not look this up, but my gut tells me from watching the game, I don't think they had a single drive in the game where they didn't get at least 2 first downs. The kneel down at the end, obviously notwithstanding. But, Sam Darnold was dealing. Other than those 3, maybe 4 plays, and one of them just being a sack where it's like, all right, dude, maybe don't take that sack. But, again, better to take the sack than throw up a ridiculous ball that gets picked off and taken back for a touchdown. So, other than those 3 plays, he played excellent. So, it was a rough game because there was 3 plays where he made a catastrophic error that could have cost us the game and flirted with us costing the game. But it's not a bad game because around that, 95% of the game, Sam Darnold was playing excellent football. So I think that speaks well to the idea of Kevin O'Connell. They talked about this with Kirk Cousins, being able to help quiet his mind. Sam Darnold seeing ghosts with the Jets. But then spending the year with Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco, I feel like Kevin O'Connell, the quarterback whisperer, able to quiet quarterbacks' minds. You see that in a game like this with a guy like Sam Darnold, who 3 plays like that could have completely derailed games in his past, especially when he was with the Jets. But here, he's able to just move on to the next play, not let it affect him, and get back to just moving the ball. They move the ball nonstop the entire game. I mean, every single drive they were moving the ball. we shot ourselves in the foot too many. Sam Darnold shot us in the foot too many times. But again, rough game. I would not call it a bad game, but we got to get that together. Because again, like they move the ball with consistency, and then the defense only gave up 6 points. We gave up 13 points as a team, but 7 of that was on the fumble return for a touchdown. 3 of the 6 that the defense gave up was on, in my opinion, a phantom pass interference call on Stephon Gilmore at the end of the game before they set up the onside kick, because where the game was at that time, multi-score game, was an 11-point game. The spread, 5.5. I believe 82% of the money was on the Vikings. 79% of the bets was on the Vikings. So they're looking at, we give them a deep ball pass interference. Maybe they take a shot at the end zone. Maybe they get a touchdown. Now all of a sudden it's not an 11-point game. Now it's at least, a 5-point game, which means they will cover the spread. So I'm just saying it is what it is. But either way, even if you think that was a good call, which maybe it was, and I'm just biased, the defense only gave up 6 points yet again. So thus far, you look at Brian Flores with the Vikings, other than the one weird game, the Jake Browning revenge game against Cincinnati in Cincinnati last year, only Jared Goff with Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell, Matt Stafford and Sean McVay, and Jordan Love with Matt LaFleur have legitimately bodied the Vikings defense. So you need a really good to great quarterback, and you need a really good to great head coach / play caller. If you have both of those things, you might be able to do some things against the Vikings. If you don't have both of those things, you've only got one of those things, you got none of those things, it appears based on the last year and a half that you have no chance against this defense. So if the D can play that well and the offense can be that consistent and we can eliminate those turnovers, the Vikings could be very dangerous, very, very dangerous, potentially dominant team. Again, they only lost by 2 points to the Detroit Lions, who for weeks, for a month now, I've been saying are the best team balling. So again, I'm not saying the Vikings are going to get there. I'm not saying they're there now. All I'm saying is you see what they could be if they're consistent. It's not a case of, if they develop, if this happens, that happens. It's literally just if they can play up to their standard 95% of the time and protect the ball, they could be a top contender. But it's easier said than done. So it is what it is. Also got to shout out Josh Oliver. It's a Josh Oliver legacy game. Caught the late touchdown, put us over the top. Had a bunch of other key completions, some third down catches, some good blocking in the run game. The Colts, not very good, but they have some good players. Their defensive interior line was fantastic. Grover Stewart, almost wanted to call him Grover Cleveland. Grover Stewart was a menace in there. Obviously, we know about Buckner. I knew who Josh Downs was, and I knew there was some general we like Josh Downs. I didn't know how good Josh Downs was. I was looking at the numbers, which I do not have pulled up, so I'm going to pull them up right now for you. But just watching him play, I was like, Josh Downs, this guy's making plays. Every time there was you needed a third down and they get a 20-yard completion or something like that, someone would catch it and you're like, who is this? Josh Downs with a 21-yard gain or something like that, every time. So, he only went 6 for 60, but again, the defense was smothering, absolutely smothering. But you look at some of his past games, the Houston game from the previous week, 4 catches, 109 yards and a touchdown. He's got 7 grabs for 66 yards and a touchdown against Tennessee earlier in the year. 9 grabs for 69 yards. He's a little bit of a player. He's a little bit of a player. Again, and you're dealing with half the season or most of the season with Anthony Richardson, who is a historically low completion percentage. And then Joe Flacco did not look like the Flacconaissance was still up and running, at least on Sunday night. But Josh Downs flashed a little bit. Seems like he might be a guy. Now the last bit before I'll get out of here, and like I said, we got a couple more bonus episodes coming up this week. But Monday Night Football, I was watching WWE Monday Night Raw on the USA Network, but I had 2 TVs set up just for this occasion. So I had the football game on the other TV. Raw goes off the air. I can switch over at about halftime. But I'm paying attention. Commercial breaks, you switch the sound over and see what's going on in the game. I was on the record as saying I was smelling this as a Tampa Bay win before the receivers got hurt. But then the receivers got hurt. Evans goes down. Godwin goes down for the season. And then it's like, well, here we go. The Chiefs are going to get another gift. Tampa Bay, a team that's been playing incredibly well. I mean, let's look at their schedule because they've beaten some teams. The Bucs beat the Commanders, who are 7-2. The Bucs beat the Lions, the best team in football. They beat the Eagles. They to some degree went toe-to-toe with the Ravens on that Monday night game. They lost by 10, but kept up with them. But, I mean, who else in the league has beat the Commanders, beat the Lions, beat the Eagles, gone toe-to-toe with the Ravens, and then damn near beat the Chiefs without their 2 best weapons? Baker right now, man, Baker is baking. Baker is dealing. Baker is cooking. Baker is playing some damn good football, even without his top 2 weapons, and a run game that's on the rise, but the last several years has not been too much of a factor. Again, I like Bucky Irving. I'll always have a soft spot for Rachaad White, but for them to keep pace, obviously the defense did their job, limited the Chiefs in terms of points. They end up scoring 30 points. It is what it is, but they kept the offense in the game, and the offense produced when they needed to produce, went down the field at the end of the game. I would have gone for 2. I probably would have gone for 2. In Kansas City, you're down your top 2 playmakers. Even if they went for 2, like, obviously the Chiefs didn't end up scoring at the end of regulation, but if they were down, then they would have had to go for it on 4th down. Like, there was a lot of time left. Todd Bowles definitely bungled that timeout situation. He took a timeout, I believe 33 seconds left, right on the goal line. I would have let that run down at least another 10 seconds probably, if not more. I mean, honestly, I would have rushed up and lined up and let it tick while you're lined up, see how Kansas City lines up against you. If you like it, keep running the clock down, run your play, or try and force Kansas City to take one of their timeouts. So I think the timeout management, the clock management there at the end it left a lot to be desired. And then, like, yeah, you can go for the tie, go to overtime, but it's the Chiefs, man. If you got a chance to take the lead, you're down your top 2 playmakers. Nobody's expecting you to win this game. You're on the road against the team with the best record in the league, still has not lost a game. Just go for 2. Just go for 2. I'm more of an old school guy than anything else. But in a situation like that, everything is pointing at you saying, just go for 2. Why not? If you lose, if you don't get it, I don't think your fans are going to be mad at you. Like, you went for it. You went for the jugular. You went toe-to-toe with the Chiefs. You had them in a spot where you could have beat them, and they just made a play, and that's fine. But I think there's too many things now that can be second-guessed, and you still end up losing. But regardless, the boys on the field, the defense, Baker, keeping the Bucs alive. They're 4-5. They're going to get Mike Evans back at some point. They're not going to get Chris Godwin back. They got to host the 49ers next week, which, again, the 49ers, they're starting to maybe put it together. But then you got the Giants. You got the Panthers. Both road games, but Giants, Panthers, then you get the Raiders. That's 3 games right there. So let's say they drop to 4-6. they're in a position, if they can get Mike Evans back and reel off 3 straight wins, that's going to put you at 7-6. You're back over 500. You're cruising. You're moving. You're flying into December. You're right where you want to be. Then you got a game at the Chargers, at the Cowboys, and then you end with Panthers and Saints. So if they can get Evans back and they can stay healthy beyond Godwin being lost for the season, I mean, you look at Giants, Panthers, Raiders, Cowboys, Panthers, Saints. That's 6 very winnable games sitting at 4-5. Tampa Bay can still win 10 games here, man. They can still win 10 games. And that game at the Chargers, if you rip off 3 straight wins and you got Mike Evans back, again, the Buccaneers, they beat the Commanders, they beat Detroit, they beat Philly, they went toe-to-toe with the Ravens, they went toe-to-toe with the Chiefs at Arrowhead. Going to LA to play the Chargers is not like this impossible game. They're in a position, man, they can even – I'm not even writing them off against the 49ers. Again, they're at home. They almost beat the Chiefs in Kansas City without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. They could beat the 49ers in Tampa Bay. I think the 49ers will probably be favored. Maybe not, but they can win all these games. There's no juggernaut left on the schedule. The closest thing to a juggernaut left on the schedule is the 49ers, who, despite the fact that they're back on the upswing, are not yet back at juggernaut status. So, like, there's no juggernauts here. The closest thing, again, is the 49ers working to get back to where they were at last year, previous years, and the Chargers, who are 5-3 and are quietly looking like a pretty damn good team. And then beyond that, a bunch of bottom feeders with 2 wins. The Bucs are not out of this, and I think the way they played in Kansas City on Monday night showed that they looked at that and said, like, listen, we are not out of this. Just because we got some key injuries, we are not done. We are not dead. We need to go out here and show that we are still a serious football team, and they absolutely did that. And they're going to be favored, even if Mike Evans doesn't come back the rest of the season, which I don't believe is going to happen. You're going to be favored at the Giants. You're going to be favored at the Panthers. You're going to be favored at home against the Raiders. You're probably going to be favored at the Cowboys unless the Cowboys find some way to turn it around. But Dak's out now, so like we're expecting Cooper Rush to be the guy. You're going to be favored at home against the Panthers. You're going to be favored at home against the Saints. So the Bucs ain't out of it. The Bucs are not out of it by any stretch of the imagination. And we got to give it up to them. I was going to pick them if they were fully healthy. I had been circling this game for weeks, but then they got the injuries, and I said, nah, I ain't touching that. And they almost got it done, so you got to give it up for them. But at the same time, as much as we all hate to say it, you got to give it up for the Chiefs, man. You got to give it up for the Chiefs. It's among the most cliche things in sports, among the most cliche things in football, but they just find ways to win. Sometimes the refs are involved, sometimes they're not. Sometimes there's some weird fuckery involved, sometimes there's not. But whatever the situation is that presents itself in the moment in a game, the Chiefs, they figure out exactly what they got to do to win that game in that moment. And they haven't lost. And that's why. It's every game is different. Every situation is different. You stay in the game. Obviously, if you could just beat the shit out of a team, beat the shit out of them. But for whatever reason, they're not. Mahomes has not been in top form all year. But they get to the end of the game. They're in the game. They assess the situation. Here's what we need to do to win this game. They go out and they win the football game. Like, I'm not going to fight it. I'm not fighting it anymore. I'm not going to sit here and complain about shit anymore. I'm not going to complain about coin tosses or refereeing or any of that. They find ways to win. And as much as we can be annoyed by it, you got to give it up to them because they win. They find a way to win every week, every single week. They find a way to win. Kareem Hunt is playing good ball with Pacheco out. Mahomes flirted with disaster a couple times, but he played much more like the Mahomes that we're used to. And I still firmly believe anyone that doesn't think this is going to happen is probably fooling themselves. He's going to be back to form by the end of the year. He's not going to play a full season of not good football. Like, by the time we get to the playoffs, Patrick Mahomes is going to be Patrick Mahomes. It just is what it is. And then they let these boys get DeAndre Hopkins, man. DeAndre Hopkins, future Hall of Famer, probably the best receiver of all time to never play with like even a good quarterback. I guess he had Kyler for a hot minute, but now that he's got like a legit top quarterback, yeah, he's old, but man, that's scary. Like Mahomes hasn't had a true number one receiver since Tyreek, and Hopkins has never had a true top tier quarterback. And now they got each other on a team where the defense is dominating, and like I said, they find ways to win. They find ways to win. I'm looking for the list of quarterbacks that DeAndre Hopkins has played for. And the only one I can find is from 2020. So let's rip through this. And of course, it's not a list. They got to insert a bunch of fucking pictures in here. Matt Schaub, Case Keenum, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Ryan Mallett, Brian Hoyer, Brandon Whedon, Brock Osweiler, Tom Savage. You remember Tom Savage? Oh, my God. Now, he did have Deshaun Watson, peak Deshaun Watson, before Deshaun Watson became a serial sexual assaulter. A.J. McCarron. Who else? I swear they had T.J. Yates in there somewhere. Why can I not find a comprehensive list of quarterbacks that this man has played with? But either way, dealing with Will Levis earlier this year and last year, Mason Rudolph, like and he's never complained, he's never bitched about it, he's never made a fuss about the fact that he's DeAndre fucking Hopkins and he's playing with Mickey Mouse quarterbacks. So, I mean, if nothing else, shouts out to DeAndre Hopkins, man, just a true professional, one of the all-time greats. And if we as fans of teams that aren't the Chiefs don't deserve the Chiefs doing what they're doing right now, at the very least, DeAndre Hopkins deserves his moment in the sun with a legitimately great football team and a top-tier quarterback. So, DeAndre Hopkins, if you're watching, if you're listening, shouts out to you, my man. I'm happy for you. I'm just happy. I'm not happy for the Chiefs, but I'm happy for you. But that's it. I guess. Nah, you know what? I was going to touch on the Jets and Texans, but we're pretty far removed from that. And I got something planned for the Texans that I want to touch on, but I want to see how they do this upcoming weekend. Same for the Jets. I want to see, can they continue off of the big win on Thursday night? Can they start to put some things together with all the talent that they have, or are they just going to be this back and forth, not very good team for the rest of the year? So that's it for part 2. Let Me Talk to You Tuesday will probably come out Tuesday night. Most of you will probably listen or watch on Wednesday, which is fine. Like I said, we got 2 bonus episodes. Going to do a quick little just trade deadline coverage deal, kind of poke around that, see, what teams made pretty significant additions, what teams made head-scratching additions, what teams could have made additions but didn't, that maybe should have. So we'll take a look at that. And then I got another bonus episode. Like I said, we're going to break down the powerless rankings, this historically large group of teams that are all legitimately, very legitimately in play to have the number 1 overall pick. So we're going to break that down, look at the schedules, and decide who's really a contender for that top pick, who's probably going to win too many games in the second half of the year to be in the mix. And I don't know, maybe we actually will rank and decide which of these teams is going to get the number 1 overall pick. through 5, and it's a bad year for it too. One of these teams might actually not be that terrible and end up with the number 1 overall pick, and it's going to be in a year where it's kind of like, everyone's kind of saying, not the best draft. But also want to take at what is a catch, because there was a lot of wild catches over the weekend, and we're just at a point now where it's like I fundamentally do not understand the rules of what is a catch. Dez caught it. I don't care what anyone says. Dez caught it. But there's just some weird things I want to take a look at there, and just why the NFL just continues to not do itself any favors by having nonsense in their rule. Like, just be logical. Be logical. How many catches are there per game? There's a lot of catches. It's one of the fundamental aspects of football is catching of the football. And still, everyone's kind of like, what's a catch? I don't know. Bring back our third Captain Knauer Good Guy Villain of the Week award. We will give that to somebody, and you're going to be very surprised of who it's going to be. Granted, it's a good guy villain, so it's kind of always a surprise because they're villains. But then, and I'll just spoil this, we're going to crown their ass. We are going to crown the Kansas City Chiefs. I talked about it enough on this episode. I'll get a little bit more into it, but I just fuck it, man. They're doing it. I just can't fight it. You can't fight it. You're just going to be upset and miserable all the time. Just fuck it, man. But until next time, until these various bonus episodes, the pick show obviously coming out for Thursday. As always, take it easy, football heads.